Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Kings, the 4th chapter. And in here we see, a lot of like a compilation of the deeds, right? The acts, the miracles that Elisha performs, on behalf of certain individuals here, right? And it's a very good chapter to highlight the power of the Lord, and the sort of put your mind at ease, knowing that the Lord was able to through the prophet Elisha help, these different people in the different conditions they were in. How much more us, in these times. So this is 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 1. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord Yahweh. And the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. So it seems that this widow woman, possibly her husband, right? But this would be considered their house. They owed, a creditor, right? They owed him something, whatever it was, money, whatever the case is. And now that their husband is dead, she's a widow. They have no means of basically paying back their debts, and therefore this creditor is like, well, if you can't pay me, then I'll just take your sons to be, bondmen, to work for me. And similar, I think in some places, say you go to some restaurant or whatever, and if this is if they're lenient enough, and they even have mercy to allow you to do this. But some places, you may go, maybe it's a diner, you eat, but you don't have enough to pay, then you're able, you might be able to pay off your tab by manual labor instead of money. So maybe doing the dishes or whatever the case is there. Verse 2, and Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what is thou in the house? So how can I help you? Like, what you got? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. So go get a lot. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So just fill up all those vessels with that pot of oil that you have. So she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. So they just kept pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring, to the point where she's like, Okay, give me the next one. And he's like, There's no more. We filled up everything. And then the oil stayed. So in one sense, the oil didn't, it didn't run out. But you can also imagine the oil was probably like flowing, right, in order for her to keep pouring. And so when all the vessels were full, it just sort of stopped flowing and just, stayed as it was. Then she came and told the man of God. And he said, Go, sell the oil and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children off the rest. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was, that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. Now this is another occasion on a different time, right? But being that it's comprised, there's a jump from verse 7 to verse 8, right? So another point in time, as Elisha was passing to Shunem, once again, this great woman, possibly a woman of like a high stature, prominent woman, a rich woman, and she basically like, no, you have to. So she basically like forced him, and he came and he ate bread. Now, you know, it means that she fed him, right? He had a meal and everything. Hospitality, basically. And so it became a thing where anytime he would pass by, you know, he would stop by, you know, hey, how's it going? Everything good? So on and so forth. And she said unto her husband, Behold, now I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. Now, the little chamber on the wall is not literally on the wall like you would imagine how you have a clock on the wall or a family portrait on the wall. This was a part of their house, probably like an upper chamber or, you know, a small room somewhere. So they ended up making this small area for like a studio. Today you would say like a studio, you know, for Elisha. Whenever he would stop by, like a guest chamber, you know, he would be able to stay there. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? So you've taken care of us, you know, you've done all this. What is it? What do you want? What can we do for you in return? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. So do you want us to put a good word in for you with the king or the captain of the host or anything like that? And the response, I dwell among my own people, is the meaning is that she's good, she's taken care of. And it's worded in such a way like you're not, you know, you're amongst people that are taking care of you, right? You're not in a place of position of being in need. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi said, so now at this point, this is like later on, right? She dwells among her own people. Cool, nice, sweet and dandy. So now he's speaking to Gehazi, right? He asks, what more can we actually do for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. So he called her again. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. So not that she didn't want a son or a child, but she didn't want to get her hopes up and then it doesn't happen. And about this season, about the time of life, meaning the time of birth, which is about 9 months. So right around the same time. And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. And once again, from verse 16 to 17, there is that jump, right? Over time, probably the next year, you know, around this time, she ended up having that child. So time flows, right? When you're reading these scriptures, it's verse after verse, but that could be a year, 3 years, 5 years in between. You know, it's just the things that are important are the ones that are documented or scribed down that we're reading of here today. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. So now this is even more time that has passed from the child being born to him being old enough to where he can go, you know, on his own, right, to the reapers. So he's not like a grown man, right? But he's about like, I don't know, maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, somewhere along those lines. You know, 5, 6, who knows? They matured quicker back then anyway. So he went to the reapers, right, and which are in the field. And he said unto his father, My head, my head. And he said to a lad, Carry him to his mother. So he told one of the workers, you know, to take his son back to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. And she stood up, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. Now you have to imagine what's going on here, right? She has a son. You know how mothers get. Their child is sick. They don't play around with that, right? Good mothers. They don't play around with that. So seeing this happening, and she's doing all she can, probably, comforting him as best she can, and then he ends up dying. She is stressed. Okay, she is very stressed. So she's moving quick. She closed the door. She's looking. And the first thing coming to her mind is she got to find Elisha. Verse 22. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well. Now at this point, it's not clear. The scriptures don't tell us if she told him what had happened or not. She likely did not, because she's in haste. She's like, I don't have time to explain all these things. Just, give me the resources and let's go. And the reason he said that is because typically it would be around the new moon or the Sabbath that, most likely Elisha would pass by, and then he would stop by and so on. Then she saddled an ass and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So today it's like if you get in a cab and you're super late, you're like, yo, can you step on the gas a bit? But here she's telling him, don't slow down unless I tell you to, or stop. So she went and came on to the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. So you can imagine, when the second she got there, not straight to his feet, probably fell at his feet, grabbed him, not in a hostile manner, but initially when somebody just moves in that way towards you, you're like, oh, what's going on? So upon seeing that, Gehazi the servant, right? But Gehazi came near to thrust her away, like, oh, back up, what's going on? And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And the Lord Yahweh hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. So typically the Lord would inform and let Elisha know ahead of time what's going on, but he's like, this time, something is going on here, and that's why she's in distress. Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, so he at that point he already knew something is wrong with the child. Gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord Yahweh liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he rose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them. So you had Gehazi, he went, and then you had the woman and Elisha, they also went. So Gehazi went up ahead. He passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child. But there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awaked. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. So now at this point, it's Elisha, it's the child, the dead child, and just them two. So he closed the door, and then he started praying to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And he went up and lay upon the child, similar to what Elijah did, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. So when your spirit leaves the body, because the spirit is what keeps the body warm or hot, your quote unquote body heat, it really originates from your spirit. So when the spirit leaves, that's why the body becomes stale and cold and, lifeless. So you can imagine, the spirit has probably came back into the child at this point, but he still wasn't fully awake yet. And he returned and walked in the house to and fro. So after stretching himself upon the child, the child's body got warm. So Elisha came back out, walked around in the house, and then he went back up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, "Call this Shunammite." So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, "Take up thy son." Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. You can imagine, right? That feeling. Ooh, boy, was that an interesting day. But, one thing I want to highlight here is the beauty of the Spirit of the Lord, right? Because even with all this, Elisha going in here and knowing this, he wasn't, losing his mind like, damn, I really hope I can do this. And, oh boy, what if it doesn't work? And the child is dead, can I even bring him back to life? And he wasn't doing all that. He went in there and the Spirit guided him and he knew exactly what he had to do. So he wasn't losing his mind. He just went in there and through the Spirit of the Lord, he was able to revive the child. Verse 38. So now this is a different account. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was dearth in the land. Meaning like there was like a drought. And the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, "Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets." Let's put something on so they can eat. And in the NLT, it reads, Elisha now returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. One day, as the group of the prophets was seated before him, he said to his servant, "Put a large pot on the fire and make some stew for the rest of the group." So they, where we at? Verse 39. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds, his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So pretty much he went and gathered likely some poisonous vines over here, or poisonous, as it says, gourds. Let's look into that. But he probably wasn't aware that this was poisonous. Let's see. Okay, here they say they have it as a wild cucumber. See if there's anything else on here. Okay, nothing too much here. Cast out the seed. Let's look at the word wild. Shada. Okay, plain, cultivated, cool. Not in the sense that we're looking for here. I wonder if they might have an account in here. Where are we in Kings? All right, it's not in here, but nonetheless, we know that, and we'll find out why this was poisonous in the subsequent verse, right? I mean, it really says it up here, right? The poisonous stew. Anyway, so he gathers these, they seethe it, they put it into the pot for the stew, and they weren't aware. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, "O thou man of God, there is death in the pot." And they could not eat thereof. So this thing is poisonous. Like this is not edible. Yeah, see, there's poison in the stew, so they would not eat it. But he said, "Then bring meal." And he cast it into the pot. And he said, "Pour out for the people, that they may eat." And there was no harm in the pot. Now, one thing to point out here is these things that Elisha did, these are not formulas that anybody can do to get the same outcome. If a child dies and you go and pray and you go and stretch yourself upon them and do what Elisha did, that doesn't mean the child is going to come back to life. Okay? If there's poison inside of, whatever, you consume poison or whatever, and you go and pour meal into it, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be poisonous anymore, or you're going to eat it and be fine. These things were a physical, sort of, how do I even put it, manifestation of these miracles. But the reason these things happened was because of the Spirit of the Lord, because of that double portion the Lord had put upon Elisha, and through the faith he had in the Lord, these were likened unto miracles that were being performed. So similar to the book of Tobit, where the angel had, I think it was was it? I forget his name. If it was Tobit or Tobias, which one was the son? But anyway, he had get the scales of the the fish, or I think it was the eyes, and it was some formula ground up or something like that, and put it upon his father's eyes, and his father was able to see again. Doing that in real life does not mean that whoever it is that's blind is going to be healed. Okay, so just want to put that out there. These things are happening through the Spirit of the Lord. All right, that is where the emphasis is upon, because just as easily he could have said, bring me, I don't know, a leaf, right? And then put that into the pot and it would work. Verse 42, and there came a man of Baal Shalisha and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, in the first fruits being like that, when it's harvest time, your first batch that you get. And he said, give unto the people that they may eat. And his servitor said, what? Should I set this before 100 men? It is 20 loaves. He said again, give the people that they may eat. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, they shall eat and shall leave thereof. Similar to how the Lord fed the multitude, right? So he set it before them, and they did eat and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord Yahweh. And so that concludes the book of 2 Kings, the 4th chapter, right? And as I mentioned before, this goes through a couple of accounts of the deeds that Elisha did through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. Okay, going to show you, the level on which, the abilities that the Lord gives, right, to his men, for whatever reason it may be, but it's needful for that time. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham Rachak Wadash. Until next time, Shalom.